Hello everyone, this is Hero and welcome back to another PTR 11.2 video. We're in Echo Dome Aldani again. I'm going to show you some footage in slow motion of a plus 20 solo pull of some of this section of the dungeon. But the reason I'm doing this video is I want to talk a little bit about talents. I've been playing around with a ton of talents, and I think on the blood side in particular I've come to some decisions about Mythic Plus that I'm happy with. This is for Deathbringer, of course. Really, the thing I want to highlight, since we're going to be maintaining a lot of the bone stuff over here to get Dancing Rune Weapon cooled down, that's normal. And we want Red Thirst, I think, to cool down Vamp Blood. But largely the pivot question is whether we can manage to survive without Purgatory, which I've been doing now on the plus 20 pulls solo fairly comfortably. I think of Heartrend as more or less a dead talent, as with Bloodshot for Deathbringer. But the index that we want to pursue, while keeping Gorfrians and the Silence, so these are sort of two mandatory pieces, I think, for Mythic Plus if we want to be somewhat viable in larger keys, is trying to skip Rune Tap while still grabbing these two talents for damage for our Blood Plague, and truthfully the healing side of Blood Plague. These two right here are providing a good deal of throughput for us on the healing side. I'm going to showcase this as we take a look. You can see here the pull that I'm going to show in slow-mo gives us around 9 million HPS. And you can see one of the main distinctive points here is the presence of Umbilicus and Blood Plague on the healing side. This is producing a great deal of healing, in part due to our 2 and 4 piece giving us access to Exterminate cast at the beginning of our pulls. So we press Reaper's Mark, we get 2 casts, we press Marrow Rend to fire off the 2 scythes, and what that ends up doing is giving us a lot of extra damage. The second scythe of Exterminate applying a Blood Plague dealing damage 100% faster. This translates into a good deal of damage. Actually, it's pretty significant damage, Blood Plague being second and pretty close to Exterminate, but also we can translate that into significant healing as well. So that's the talent setup that I'm going to begin with. Things I would index out of course, depending on the keys, definitely getting rid of the utility of Gorfiends, though I think it's probably useful to keep around. And where will we plug that back in? Well, consumption is pretty good. You might need Rune Tap a little higher up. And then if you're nervous or you're pugging, I would say Purgatory might be useful as well, just to give yourself a little bit more insurance and self-sustain. But I wanted to test without Purgatory, especially because it's nice to see just how close we can shave things and what the gameplay looks like when we have indexed away from that sort of important defensive. I will note that on the trinket side, we are making use of Devouring Nucleus, which itself is kind of a cheat death as well. And I do have Shadowguard's Twisted Harvester, which is a ton of extra leech over the course of a pull. You can see here, I was trying to get the big guy and these 2 packs of little mites, which really do a ton of physical damage mixed with this 1 burst slam, and you'll see it coming up here where it basically sends me to 30% HP, I would say. Here we go, if I don't put a barrier on it. And this is just so I can do Death Strike timings and have, I would say, a difficulty mode enabled here to make sure I'm actually testing the survivability. And that means we have like sustained incoming physical damage from the mites hitting and these big burst windows. We could have achieved the same by pulling in some of the Gorgers that do the cast, but I find this is a better pull that we're going to represent here. You would just go forward a bit and grab the Ravaging Scavengers, the 2 of them there with the Voracious Gorger, and you likely can also pull in the other Voracious Gorger that includes the mites. There's 2 mites as well as another scavenger that's basically attacking this Terrified Broker a little bit further up the pull. So that would grab us the 1 pack of Invading Mites, the 2 Scavengers and Gorger, the other Gorger, Scavenger, and 2 over gorged mites and the big guy. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 medium mobs. What would we say these mites are? 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess there's 5 of them that we path through, and then the big Ravenous Destroyer. On a 12, that's pretty reasonable, and you just have to do a few kicks and some AoE stops, maybe Gorfiends once for the silence, as well as the pull, some grips, that kind of stuff, sleet, normal things that we would be doing. But here you can see, as the pull goes on, we are losing resources. It's getting a little dicey, and our healing is climbing up to that 10 million mark in this plus 20. Again, I'm 710 here, so we are really into management resource territory. And the reason I wanted to check this pull and show it to you kind of in slow-mo is we are not taking blood tap, so we don't have access to any runes at the bottom end, and we don't have rune tap. I was doing a lot of testing in Sand Lane, and I cannot get the same productivity that I get out of Deathbringer, and it's largely due to the rune management and the need for GCDs to go towards towards Heart Strike or Vamp Strike. I'm finding in the bigger pulls, Death Speaker is just more consistent at getting me the resources I need. In particular, enough Bone Shield charges, because we get them now in our talent tree by just pressing our our button, our Reaper's Mark, excuse me. But also, we don't have to spend so many GCDs all the time pressing Vamp or Heart Strike. We can time that appropriately. At the bottom end of my resources, when I'm basically out, you can see I'm close. I have one rune left open, and so I'm staggering my Death Strikes and hitting more Blood Strikes here, waiting for CDs. At the bottom, you can see Death Speaker still is giving us enough tools. We don't have to press any Marrow Rends at 2 rune charges, whereas with Sand Lane, I find I do have to press it more often. I'm just really in a drought for my Bone Shield charges. It doesn't line up as nicely. We're also mixing in a lot more consumption casts, I find, in Sand Lane. And here, it's really comfortable. We're getting around the corner, meaning I can tank everything and get through all of my CDs and not really run out of resources. You can be leaving some open GCDs or blood boiling a little more, and you still get back to Dancing Rune Weapon. You still have your options like Lichborn. Really, it's a huge utility, by the way, guys. I love having a lower CD on Lichborn. It's crazy how useful that is, how that fits so nicely into the kit. Just so you're understanding, that's Death's Messenger in the Deathbringer tree over against Expelling Shield. So Expelling Shield's not bad. That's picking up on a theme that we already have. Cast speed reduction by 10% for anybody who does direct damage to your anti-magic shell. Maybe that's actually useful for Gorgers in general, or some of this key. But having the 30-second cooldown on Lichborn and Raised Dead, you can see I didn't even really use my sack pack, but it's there as needed. And Lichborn, the extra leech is really lovely. Not to mention the damage reduction, of course. But yeah, as you can see, we're getting through all of our resources here. You can see the cast going off. I hope that's helpful for you to see what I'm prioritizing in terms of buttons. You're death striking basically I'd say every 2 to 3 GCDs. So I doubled up there because I was trying to pull these guys in to make a bit of a statement at the end, see if I could survive. I was hoping to do this a little earlier in the pull, but I wanted to get comfortable with the rotation and see where we're at. I'm at a fairly comfortable spot now, and I know we have no resources, so this is kind of a poor test, meaning, even though we've killed some of the Gorgers, I am not in a position in terms of my resources where I'm happy to add these on. But I was one GCD away there. You can see, let me just pull back there a few seconds before I have the resources for a Death Strike. I'm trying to cheat to get to my Dancing Rune weapon here. You can see the cast goes off. I'm sitting low. I Death Pact, and I'm going to need to Death Strike here. So the Death Pact has been pressed. I Death Strike. I have the resources. Look at, I Heart Strike to get resources, and I'm thinking I'm about 60% HP. This volatile spell is going to go off. Can I fit Dancing Rune weapon in before I do my Death Strike? Because I have the resources to Death Strike. Dancing Rune weapon goes off. I get chunked again. We are 1 second away. Yeah, look at me hitting the key. You can see me hitting my E key to try to Death Strike. The global cooldown's coming along. We are 0.5 away. I'm pressing Death Strike. The GCD has gone off. I'm pressing it. Look at where my health is. My health is in the basement. And I die to ticks. There was a 4.6k hit from one of these guys before it goes off. So you can see the margins here are quite thin, but I was still going to turn the corner with the secondary pull that I had brought along because I did have the resources to get there. And if I Death Striked instead of pressing Dancing Rune weapon that other time, it would have been okay. I could have done that, hit Dancing Rune, swung back around, and been all right. I really like where this is at, specifically on the damage side. You see how look at how many copies of Blood Plague are ticking away on all of these mobs. All of these copies are healing us for a substantial amount, as I just showed. Again, guys, I don't know if it's easy for you to see that when we are in such low eye level, having our Blood Plague produce this much healing, as well as the Umbilicus Eternus, compared to Death Strikes, is pretty obscene. So our blood shields, we're getting sometimes, 2 million blood shields up to 10 million blood shields from just one Death Strike. Our Death Strikes themselves are lay on hands, more or less, given how the disparity in our gear compared to what we're getting hit by. I think I show it in the video. I'll pull it up again. I know it's restarted, but let's drag it forward to the moment when I die. I just want to see if I do the recap, so I can show you. I don't think I pressed the recap. I'll show you. I'll show you on live so you can see when I get hit. I'll do a big pull here. See if I can actually get into the pull and talk a little bit about it. So we're Dancing Rune weapon into Tombstone with Icebound just to get us in. Let's try to drag these guys in really quick. I just need some resources, so we're going to eat that with our shell. But you can see here, these are pretty nasty pulls. I'm going to die here. Oh, no, we made it. Yeah, we're okay. So we didn't actually proc. We would have... oh, we did proc. Yeah, so that was our cheat death. That was our cheat death from the trinket there. We would have had Purgatory for that kind of a pull. But you can see the damage taken's a little over 10 million, and just so you can see the recap of what you're getting hit by in general, in 710 gear, you're going to get hit for melees around 6 million. This will go down, obviously, as you acquire gear, as you move into your plus 20s more naturally, because you'll take less damage due to your armor, all that kind of jazz. But you can see as these guys get overgorged, they're going to hit you even harder for 10 million. So they'll do a cast, and then they do a jump, like a little leap on you. I think maybe it's this one. I can't remember. But this is a lot of intake. So the melee damage that you're taking, how long was I alive for? 30 seconds. Within 30 seconds, you're taking 305 million damage. Again, just so you can see, Blood Plague hadn't even really got a chance to tick very much. Shell was clean up those gorges, but that's a lot of wow, 21 million from Shell, crazy. But you can see that the damage intake is pretty high, 6 million or so a tick, probably 3 or 4 million, maybe a little bit more as you get more gear, and we're sitting at something like 23 million, maybe up to 40 when we're in vamp. So it's a lot of our HP. That's part of that conversation where when you think about the kind of button pressing I'm doing, look, I'm low on resources here. I'm death striking every 3 spells. You saw there, Death Strike, Heart Strike, Death and Decay, Death Strike. Then we had Marrow Rend, Heart Strike, Death Strike. Blood Boil, Heart Strike, Death Strike. So every third ability, what Death Speaker is allowing you to do is press Death Strike every third ability, which I think is really a wonderful cadence. You can get this out of Sand Lane, but you're going to be feeding far more vamp strikes into this, which is okay. Doesn't mean you're not getting healing out of them. But personally, in these really big pulls, when Death Strike is a lay on hands and you need to be able to press it every time, I'm finding that I'm only able to manage both the Bone Shield side and the RP necessary to produce a Death Strike every third GCD on Death Speaker. I can't quite do it. Guys, I've tried all these pulls over and over again on Sand Lane, and I have so many like half scuffed videos where I'm trying to get into the pull, and then 10 seconds in I just don't have the initial resources available. And it's partly due to the way that we're getting bone shields from casting our Death Speaker off the bat. That just gets us over the hump, and the way the exterminates are functioning early to allow us to juggle back and forth and get a lot of Blood Plague out, for example, for more healing, but also just the one cost Marrow Rend is so significant. Yeah. One cost Marrow Rend is interesting too, because it's also we're getting RP out of it versus the 2 cost. So I just think it's a little easier. Maybe that's the problem. Is I'm not obviously a Blood DK main. The only class I've ever played, I'm not actually that good at it probably compared to most of the people doing this content. But just if you're talking to a new player and you're saying, hey, here's what you should try with Blood DK. Here's how you can open now that you don't have slappy hands. I'm finding Death Speaker is the one that's consistently allowing me to get into pulls and manage them, and then at low resources really can manage those situations and get back to your CDs a lot more comfortably than Sand Lane. And I know that Sand Lane's giving us Blood Beast again on our tier, and I think Blood Beast has been pretty good. Let's see if I have any pulls. Trash. Is this? If I have any Sand Lane pulls on trash for you to show you, because it is pretty good damage, and like I wish it were better. I don't have it here. I'll have to go dig them up later. But I just found I could not get into a pull properly. Like I'd either have 0 blood bone shields after I try to get Dancing Rune going and Tombstone to get in, these kinds of things. And then I'd be spending 2 GCDs on 2 rune cost Marrow Rends. And that really sets you so far behind as far as resources at the beginning of a pull. Or, I'd spend a bunch up front to get there and then try to stabilize and get going. And then the GCD demand would be so difficult. You're really wanting to vamp to keep things going. Or your Blood Beast, blowing up, but maybe the healing that you get out of it, like Bloodworms, right, is not always as consistent as you want, although Bloodworms kind of got nerfed, I think. Whereas Blood Plagues, I don't know, for some reason, the cadence of Blood Plagues healing matches really nicely with the kit for Blood DK. So, anyways, those are some of my takeaways from the talent side when I was just really doing a lot of testing You could probably fit consumption if you want to shed some of the utility. Purgatory, if you're new, I think is a really good thing to do for especially early in a tier where you're just getting your tier set. Deathbringer might feel a little clunky without the tier set, so Purgatory might be valuable to get you started. Some of the other talents that I thought were reasonable or okay. Obviously, Blood Tap is pretty good early in a tier 2 when you are shy of resources. And Rune Tap I didn't find that valuable. Like, yeah, you can time this. I mean, sorry, I should rephrase. Rune Tap is amazing. Like Death Strike, when in high content like this I'm doing, you could see where I could have Rune Tapped those big blasts or those 3 gorges going off and probably survived where I had died before. But I just think it's like you end up using a valuable resource, a rune, and you can just death strike because it's a lay on hands at this stage. So I'm not sure the rune type will I'll be definitely using this at certain stages for boss mechanics, these kinds of things. But in terms of the Mythic Plus environment, I think it was better to get ourselves fully into the Bone Shield stuff. Just that extra couple stacks makes a big difference. Yeah, and the versatility, I shouldn't be shy on that. Maybe I should talk about where I think our stats are. I'm playing, actually, this could be incorrect, so don't take this one um, without a grain of salt. But I'm trying this with low haste, and part of the reason for that, by the way, is not because I think this should only be played with low haste, but I like testing at low haste because it gives you a really nice foundation or baseline for playing in the beginning of a tier when you're changing gear out all the time and you might get a piece that you don't want. Say Verse Mastery is not desirable, but it's your best eye level piece and you got to keep it around and you're sitting at 15% haste and you're like, oh, this is gross. You can come back here and be like, you know what, Hero was testing with 7% haste and he was able to manage quite well. I kind of think that low haste is actually okay, although I'm partial to low haste because I prefer to have, maybe I'm just getting old, a slower GCD and more determined choices and thinking through things. But you can see here in 7% haste, hitting your death strike every third GCD, you're managing just fine and you can do all the things you want to do. I think I indexed Mastery and Verse. Part of this is just a consequence of picking up the PvP gear, but I actually like having this much Verse in Mythic Plus for Blood DK, partly because it's like an insurance blanket for a spec that more or less no one can interact with. This is one of the weird things about Blood DK and pugging, or Mythic Plus in general. People, unless they set up their, especially healers, set up their bars correctly to follow your runic power and follow your CDs, will not know when to contribute to your health unless you're on comms and you can have some good comms with people and say, okay, I'm gonna need sack, or I'm gonna need paints up, or whatever. Your ability to communicate this information to a pug group is going to be very limited, which is probably one of the reasons why Blood DK, outside of the other utility pieces that people complain about, but it's just that people don't know how to interact. Like with Brewmaster, they don't know how to interact with a Blood DK and say, okay, now I can participate in keeping this person alive. You just trust, well, he flopped, so bad Blood DK. Like, you can't even tell. There's not even good metrics for your other teammates to assess whether you were okay or not, or just goofed up. And I frankly like that about Blood and about Brewmaster, that you really need to play well and you can shine in those moments and you can survive in places that no one else would and keep a pull going. So there's uses here, but versatility helps on the pugging side if you're going to move forward with Blood DK, to ensure that you feel confident and you're ready to go, and that if you're really on your own and you get no help from your healers at all, that you have that little buffer for yourself. Um, I think there's some good weak auras around. I have to check the forums in the Discord for blood DKs to help other people see when you can help a blood DK. But if people are asking at the beginning, if they can track your runic power, that's probably the first step. And the second one would just be if they can track your main CDs like Vamp Blood and Dancing Rune Weapon, that kind of stuff. Because if they can see when those are running, they'll know that they really don't have to bother at all. And then especially if they can see when you don't have enough RP to Death Strike, when your health goes up, like bang, I get goes one shot right back up. That's when, as a healer, I want to look at my blood DK as soon as they've pressed a Death Strike, because you want to contribute in between those spaces. So you're rarely going to see a blood DK Death Strike twice in a row, because it's inefficient for these big pulls where you need to pool your resources. But as a healer, if you watch their health get spike back up, you know that for the next second and a half, maybe GCD or two, that you can contribute if their health dips again, and you might want to hand them something, because yeah, they may death pact, or they may do something else to help mitigate those in between portions. But yeah, that's where I found it was most difficult. And you can see in the replays, even when I'm dipping low in resources, and I was trying to cheat out my Dancing Rune Weapon for that final piece, I should have Death Striked. And that's a moment where a healer who's wise and sees what's going on would know, yeah, hero just Death Striked. He's dipped immediately. I'm gonna help him out with something, that kind of thing. Anyways, let me leave off with doing a pull here. This is always my fun test at the end of pulls, where I try to do a pull that survives all of the gorges. So we'll see how we do here. I did do an inefficient. I'm gonna have to get myself into this pull with an early shell, but that's okay. Oh, I'm gonna die. You can just feel it, eh? You can feel it when you're gonna die. Get some damage reduction. Wait for that to go off. And we're back to Vamp. Okay, so we're doing okay. Gotta do this. These two gorges will go off, and I'll hit there. We're okay. Again, I'm not kicking the gorges because I want to see our survivability. That's the main piece. Oh, we're going to die again. I cheated. Ooh, gotta wait on that. By cheated, I mean I pressed a button that wasn't Death Strike. That's the best way to talk about cheating as a DK. Right there, see? Look at this. Blood Boil, cheating. See, you can see in the marker. Death Strike, Heart Strike, Blood Boil, Reaper's Mark. So if we follow the code, I doubled here because I was a pain. We have Death Strike, D&D, Heart Strike, should be a Death Strike, good to go. Then we Blood Boil, Tombstone, which is kind of a heal, so it can get us there, but we're starting to cheat again. So Blood Boil, Heart Strike, Death Strike, so that Tombstone was a bit of a cheat, fine. Heart Strike, Blood Boil, should have been Death Strike, cheated with a Reaper's Mark. Anyways, but you can see, guys, that was even more healing, just because we have a whole bunch of magic damage coming in, so there's huge bursts, meaning our Death Strikes are going to be pretty good. But even in this context, we're still getting a lot of throughput from Blood Plague, which I love. Yeah, that's a sense of things, guys. I think the big takeaway for me, if you're thinking about why this build for Mythic Plus, is actually the damage of Blood Plague, which is going to scale really high with these big pulls. I think on the beginning of this pull, you can run it down right to the end, like I told you, and then get out a bunch of Dancing Rune Weapons from your Reaper's Mark, fire off a bunch of Blood Plagues, Blood Boil, have this ticking down like crazy, and it'll do a lot of damage for you and be sustaining. So I'm enjoying this build. I would recommend. Let's just see what the recap was. Yeah, look at these hits, these 12 million hits. Amazing. I would recommend running something like this. A few choices here on the class side to pick up. It's a lot of fun. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos as much as I am. Catch you again next time. Bye.